Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Chai Time. I'm your host Alina Minhas, and today we're going to talk about social media. Yes, social media and the impact it has on your child's learning, their education, whether it makes it easier for them or it just adds on to their distractions. Let's find out today. So, our guest speaker is Temur K. Bande. He has been an educator for more than 20 years and he also has an experience in teaching, in leading IB programs, and he has been a consultant. And more than that, he has a lot of knowledge when it comes to education and ed tech. So I think so Temur is the perfect guest to talk about the evolving role of technology in learning. So without further ado, let's hear his insights. Mr. Temur, welcome to Chai Time.
Thank you very much.
How have you been doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
That's great. How was your week? How has everything been going so far?
It's a tough week. I've just taken on a new assignment, so I think it's fairly demanding. So I'm looking forward to the weekend coming up from tomorrow.
Okay, that's good. That's something to look forward to. Yeah. So our topic for today is social media. Yeah, and that is a really hot topic in education, and that is something everybody I'm sure is familiar with. So, given your extensive background in both traditional and modern educational systems, how do you see social media, influencing the way education is delivered today?
I think social media has completely changed the dimensions of learning for everyone. Not just learning, or if I was to say education, but I think it has changed dimensions for the entire global sort of context because communication, travel, health, education, commerce, economy, everything has sort of revamped because of that. Social media has allowed that access, which used to be monopolized by a few. So it has now traveled its way down to the streets, down to the common man, down to the villages, small towns, areas where you, as far flung as you can think of. And also, at the same time, through this vast spread, it has also stitched together and brought together the entire world at the same time. So it's a beautiful sort of mix of not only knowledge, information, education flowing through and through the cracks of that monopolized spectrum that used to be there for a few. And also at the same time, it has brought the whole world together also at one platform. So that's the beauty of social media in terms of learning and evolving is concerned.
Yeah, and you being an educator, do you think social media sometimes, keeps the students distracted, or it just keeps on, like, taking more of their time, and it gets to a point where it's an issue for the teachers as well?
Actually, that's a good question. What has happened now is that social media has become part and parcel of this young generation that is growing up. If you ask me, I'm not too happy with too younger people having social media platforms in the first place or gaining too much screen time. I mean, that's extremely hazardous for these young ones. Although this is a generation that is born into technology, and they're natives of technology. Still, I feel technology should evolve in their lives and not be given to them, right when they can start holding things. This extreme screen time is extremely hazardous. So that's a separate topic altogether. But I think coming back to your question, social media in itself, I think, has both the impacts. While it is entertaining, it is distracting, it is
Yeah.
something that has a negative influence as well. It, at the same time, it is informative, it is educational, and it brings a lot more awareness. So it's a mix. I would say it's a mixed bag.
Yes, and as an educator, and in your childhood as well, I don't think there was a lot of social media at all. And nowadays, it's like everything internet, social media. Do you think the learning was better back then, or do you think that it was more of how you dealt with things? Even then, there were distractions as well.
What is interesting is that I wasn't born into technology. There was no social media. There's only media when I
Yeah,
was growing up. There was one channel that we used to watch. There was one television. There was no Netflix. There was no
yeah,
internet, Wi-Fi. So everything was,
yeah,
watching a channel across the border was a big, big thing. Catching a channel across the border. What has happened is that at the same time, it was my generation that saw the transformation also. I remember
yeah,
during my masters is where the internet the dial-up internet came and how we got access to hotmails and these Gmail accounts,
Yes.
how we got access to that huge plethora of information available to us by through a click. So I was the generation that saw the transition also come by at the same time. I think learning was a little, it's convenient now, and there's no excuse not to know anything now. Now everything is just a click away. But I think the drive to learn was more back then than it is right now, sadly.
Yes.
Uh, I think just because it is too accessible, it is too easy out there to get any information you want. It has completely dampened down the desire to search, to seek, and to get more information. Previously, with no internet, there was a huge desire to learn more. There was a huge desire to go to libraries, to read, to ask, to travel, to get good books, etc. But now, unfortunately, thanks to internet, everything seems to go down. Not completely, but it has gone down. That drive to learn has definitely gone away.
Yes, I also agree. I think so. Back in your generation, it was more of how do you manage things. Even when you were not doing studies, you were also doing extracurriculars. But nowadays, it's like you're scrolling through something and you don't know. It's like many hours have passed away, and you're like, oh, okay. So I was using this social for so long. So I think so. It has worked. It has also affected your focus as well. I think so. When you're watching so many reels at once, I think so it really affects students' focus. So that is an issue as well. I also agree. Um, Coming back to the topic with your experience as an ed tech advisor, how do you think educators can, really integrate social media or really add social media into their teaching strategies?
I'll go back to what I said earlier. This is a generation that has basically grown into technology. They're natives of technology. We are the immigrants into technology. So the teachers are the immigrants, the learners are the natives. So what has happened is that this is a generation that has grown up watching audio visuals around them, that have grown up learning through the aid of audio visuals. So teachers now don't have a choice but to integrate their method of learning into their classrooms. Also, the concept of classrooms has have evolved. I mean, thanks to edtech. Um, Previously, what used to happen was that children would go to a school that had a certain capacity. Say a school would have 200 capacity for children, and they would try and get almost 300, stuff the children in, and that's the maximum they would go. Thanks to EdTech, what has happened is that that same school is now accessible not to those 200, 300 students, but to perhaps 200, 300,000 children. And that too across the world, not just within their city, their environment, their immediate neighborhood. It has gone global from that perspective. So the whole dimension has changed completely for learning. So I think it can be used fantastically by teachers, brought into their classrooms, and through that they can have much more impactful teaching compared to a plain, dry, simple learning through whiteboards and blackboards and copies, etc. This is a generation that is used to a lot more technology than actually they should be. But that's how they learn. So this is something we can't shy away from. It has to be built into the curriculums. It has to be built into their classrooms, and like I said, beyond the classrooms, because that's where the real learning lies for them.
Yes, and I think so. After COVID-19, I think a lot of technologies have been introduced in the field of education. What do you think is sort of driving that shift from traditional classrooms to more of digital learning environments? Do you think it was mainly because of COVID-19, or maybe it was because it is now more accessible to everybody?
I think COVID definitely jumped up that process, but that process was always there. It was just that we were going a little slow, perhaps initially. Although that some people felt that we are going too far too quickly, but COVID sort of changed all that. COVID made it necessary, and therefore I think the pace picked up during that period. Technology, and the reason it has evolved is because technology has advanced tremendously and continues to advance as we speak. You have to now imagine a world where augmented reality or artificial intelligence will rule.
Yes.
We're talking about a future not so far, not so distant, where robotics will play a very important role. All of this technology that will now have to be brought into the classrooms, have to be brought into the life cycle of a student, even if they're not in the classroom, perhaps. A lot of concept of homeschooling, home learning will go up thanks to technology. So there are dimensional changes that are occurring as we speak. So the entire process of learning, schooling, education is going to be revamped completely in a very, very short period of time.
Yes, we are seeing it right now as well, even though there has been a shift. But even now, if people want to educate themselves on certain topics, if they want to pursue a certain degree, they can just go and have online courses as well. If anybody has questions for us, they can just write them down in the chat box, and we would love to answer your questions, guys. Moving on to the next question, how do you think educators and students are now interacting using social media, try to share and create educational content? Because I remember before that you couldn't have that much access to your teacher, but nowadays students can get feedback from their teachers, they can reach out to them. How do you think that has happened?
Before I answer this, let's analyze the traditional classroom. So, what used to happen was there were about 20, 30 students. The teacher would walk in, teach a subject, walk out. The next teacher would come in, and the process would go on for the whole day. The days would be converted into weeks, weeks converted into months, and an entire academic year would finish. But now, what has happened? That learner is not restricted to that physical teacher walking into the classroom. The teacher itself will give you access to an online teacher which is who's sitting somewhere else in the world or in a city, nationally speaking. The learner will go home and will join edtech platforms to gain further and go beyond that single teacher. So perhaps even tuitions have converted now into online channel where you are not just restricted to teachers available in your city or vicinity, but also now in the region or globally speaking. So you can gain access to anyone and everyone. So the concept of that teacher has evolved. And over and beyond that physical human teacher, we now have technology teaching you. So things like Chat GPT, for example, the research on Google by yourself, all these free courses which are being given to you are out there. All of this has changed the dimension of a teacher. Now let's look at the student. A traditional student would hold a bag, walk into the classroom, sit out there, face the teacher, and start gaining knowledge. If you pay well, you go to a better classroom. If you can't pay well, you go to an ordinary classroom. That was the tradition. Now that has changed completely. Even if you can't afford good quality teaching, sitting in your homes through edtech, through technology, you can gain access to one of the best teachers that are available out there. These are there are free courses now given to you by top Ivy League universities in the US. You gain access through YouTube and many other platforms of discussions, simulations, and all these sort of inspirational discussions that are available for you. They're all a click away. So you can surf the net according to your interests and gain knowledge substantially. So that traditional student has now also evolved. A student will not have any age barrier now. So an older person can learn from a very young person. A very young person can now learn from an much older person. That gender, age, race barrier has completely diminished. So the concept of learning from both sides, that of a teacher and that of a learner, has completely been evolved.
Yes, and I think so. Traditionally, students were, it was very rare for many students to find their mentors, to be able to reach out to teachers. Do you think that nowadays students are educator yourself, students are able to, reach out to you way in a very effective manner than they could in the past?
I think previously you were very restricted and you would go on the basis of some sort of references. But nowadays, what has happened is that mentorship has again evolved. But with that comes a lot of dangerous aspects as well. You don't know your mentor. You just bumped into them on the internet,
Yeah.
or you have been thrown towards them by some common source. Now, what quality are they giving you? What quality teaching are they providing you? Is that correct? Is that authentic? Is that incorrect? Is something that we don't know. There is no surety because there's no controlling mechanism here. And you have to use your brains, or you have to select whether the knowledge coming your way through a so-called mentor is apt, is authentic, or just incorrect. Also, what has happened is that in countries like ours, we don't have a mentorship structure. Mentorship structures exist in the West, And that is why it is very important to have a national or a regional mentorship program within our country, where these youngsters are mentored by professionals from the field. A physics teacher will never be able to tell you about engineering, an engineer will be able to tell you about engineering. So it's
That's
important to have these role models and mentors who can guide you, not just in terms of subject selection and courses, but through their own life experiences, and guide you. So that is something unfortunately missing in our part of the world.
Yeah. Do you think social media has somehow introduced it in a way that you can also check up on a lot of other things? You can also do your own research. You can also do their background research, or is it something that student needs to still have some sort of guidance in order to use social media?
No, I think guidance is always good, but this is a generation that is self exploratory. I mean, they're very experimental, unlike my generation. So there's this constant, not fear, I would say, but constant feeling of trying something new and going out there. As far as information is concerned, like I said, it's a click away. So now you're teaching in a classroom, for example, where the child can raise the hand and say, "Sir, madam, I think you're wrong," because whatever you stated, they would go online and verify and authenticate and go one up in front of everyone inside the classroom, or email you something as a student, and you would say, wow, that's perfect. But if you go through a plagiarism check, it's chat gpt coming your way, not the student's work itself. So it goes both ways, authenticity as far as teaching, but authenticity as far as student is also something that has become questionable now. If you don't have plagiarism checks, you would never know where this has come from. You speak to the person, they will speak very differently, but you allow them to write on the same concept, and they write very, very differently. So I think that has sort of also gone haywire, where you cannot authenticate what is coming your way as a student or as a teacher.
I think so. That's also one thing we discussed in the previous podcast, where the students are also using AI to write their assignments. Meanwhile, the teachers are also using AI to kind of check their plagiarism. So I think so. AI has been integrated into education a lot more now than it was previously as well. Um, as for students, what sort of role do you think social media plays in building a sense of community among them? Because previously it was maybe you can join a society, you can do this. And right now there has been a lot of like students interacting online through sitting at a different place in the world. Do you think it has created a community among students?
It has, because what has happened is that these students are now global citizens, whether they like it or not. Sitting in whichever part of the world, including Pakistan, they are global citizens, and they are bound to interact with their peers globally. So that is where the sense of community comes. Also, because of your interests, your aptitude, your likes, your exposure, you get access to far more communities where you can actually go and see where your real aptitude and liking lies. So that's where the experiments also come in as far as children are concerned, where they jump from one to another and evolve over a period of time. When they were young, they were perhaps keen on just robotics, or Roblox for that matter. When they grew older, they realized no, STEM is where their interest is, or philosophy is what they would like to explore and go into. So they find their respective communities on social media. There are various platforms that allow you to integrate and touch base with people who are like-minded or who have similar interests. So such communities have cropped up globally thanks to social media, which is a fantastic thing, because you're now not forced to sit through platforms where you have nothing in common with the other person, which used to happen physically in schools and colleges. Now you get to have that choice where you can, like I said, go beyond the borders and not restrict yourselves to the limitations of your house, your school, your locality, etc. You can go global sitting at home.
I think that's a really good opportunity for a lot of people, because a lot of the times resources are not enough. People are limited with those things, and somebody sitting in a third world country, that's a great learning opportunity. Do you think that social media also comes with some big challenges that in the future we need to look out for?
Challenges will always be there. Whenever we talk about technology, social media, AI, etc., whatever, there are always ethical challenges. There are these ethical questions which will always arise. And I think this is something very important for children, students to understand as well. They can't just go into and dive directly into everything without understanding the ethical consequences of their actions. So therefore, it becomes very important to understand the flip side of what they are doing. So while all that is good, and we've spoken about the good, mostly there is this bad as well that comes alongside. So I think it's very important for students or the young generation to understand both sides of the coin and then take a rational, calculated, educated decision as to how to use social media. While all these positives have been there, there are a lot of negatives also. So all your negative campaigns, harassment campaigns, all these negative sort of influences, whether it's religion, sectarian, political, regional, global, etc. These biases are now being created in the minds because remember, as you said earlier, we're dealing with a generation that unfortunately does not go into in-depth reading. It's a skim reading generation. They don't go into depths and depths of analysis. So there's no sense of history, there's no sense of any kind of facts and figures, and they just hear things and ape it the next day. So drawing room discussions become opinions and policies for them. Unfortunately, there's no detailed understanding. So the flip side or the negative side is that they read something on social media, they believe it instantly without thinking about whether to analyze and whether to rationalize what they are reading, and therefore go on. And nowadays, with the the whole sort of design as far as technology is concerned, they understand your moods and they understand what you like and what you don't like. So everything related to that will come onto your face. So anything that
Exactly.
you can prefer is going to be shown by media as so they
Yeah.
understand the moods. It is made in such a way that it is designed in such a way that it works magically according to your likings and your own desires. So whatever you scroll, whatever you try and search, they understand, and the algorithms are made in such a way that you will get what you want. So, in that, if you follow a political party, for example, everything pro that political party will surface. Anything against, you will not believe it because you've never heard about it. So, there's one sided view also. So, as they used to commonly say, you will look where you want to look, not what is out there.
Yes, I think so. We had discussed that before as well. There are these filter bubbles and these echo chambers that social media is creating for a lot of people and young minds. And what they do is they interact with their same sort of people, the people who have the same outlook and mindset. So I think so. In that case, it's really important for us to guide the students because in that case they don't know much about it. But how do you think, when it comes to that, institutions or educators can make sure that social media is integrated but in a very effective manner?
I think it's a combination. It's not just the educators, the school, or the teachers. I think it's the parents also, or the elders at home that need to play a very very important role. Unfortunately, most of the elders don't know what their kids are up to, what they're looking at, what they're searching, what they're listening to, what is going in their heads, what is being indoctrinated in their heads. They're completely aloof. They're completely distant from all of that. So they've given them the gadgets for the sake of it because everyone has it. They don't see what age is there, whether it's age appropriate or not. They're given these expensive, gimmickries like tablets and laptops, etc. Again, without realizing the impact it has, because the impact is not just social, the impact is psychological and even physical. Constantly sitting and playing with the gadget will have an impact on your body as well. So all these impacts have to be. So parents are a very important stakeholder. It is not just the responsibility of the teacher and the school. I repeat that a lot of parents just do hands up and give up their entire responsibility onto the school. I think it's a combination. It's not just the parents, but it is not just the school as well. So it has to be a combination of both of them, and then there together they can work in terms of modifying how social media is being used, what social media is being used, and how much of social media is being used. So these are very important questions that both need to streamline and answer. At the same time, having said that, please also remember that we cannot handhold these older teenagers. We can't handhold university students. So there comes a time where you have to let go as well, and you have to give that maturity to the child to trust them beyond a certain age. You can't micromanage them for the rest of their lives. So there comes a time where you have to let go. But till that time, you have to make sure that you educate the child well enough about what we were discussing earlier, the pros and cons of whatever they're doing, whatever social media they're using. You can't just say don't do it. You have to say why you can't do it. That why is very important to educate the children with.
Yeah, I think so. A balanced sort of approach is very necessary. And do you think that as a student who doesn't want to interact on social media anymore, he wants to go on social media detox, as they say, do you think they can survive in this world without just using any sort of technology? Or do you think it's also important to just be, very much to interact through technology, because if you do not know much about it in the future, you won't be able to keep up with the rest of the people.
No, I think there's no hard and fast rule. There are still those who read, who prefer to hold a book in their hands instead of flip pages on the internet. I think there are people who believe in the concept of library. Rare, very few, but there are people. So, for example, even within technology, there are those who are very good with audios, who like to listen, and then they take on, they enhance their learning through listening skills. But there are those who want to watch. They are more of a visual people. So the impact comes when they see things. But then there are also those who learn by doing it, by physically, actually, manually getting into stuff and doing it. So learning has various platforms for various people. And now with technology and information, with systems like IB, the International Baccalaureate System, where children are taught to learn in the way which best suits their ability. So, in that particular sense, children are learning through various aspects, not just one single dimension. And at times they explore themselves instead of others telling them how to do it.
Yes, I think so. With social media, other than that, a lot of technologies that have been introduced, they really perform well when it comes to students with special needs, when it comes to students who cannot, are blind, or either they cannot, read well. For a lot of students who have special needs, I think so. AI has really interacted well with them. Do you think that? That sort of like chatbots or any AI model that students can interact with, then it gives them some sort of, because ChatGPT also has introduced this model where they can talk to it. Do you think that also helps students, or a teacher can never be replaced?
No, I think a teacher can be replaced. AI is going to replace, I think, almost everyone, except for perhaps artists and creators. Everybody else will be outdated one day. I think what needs to happen is that even with the chatting AI, what is going to happen is these children are going to get more isolated, socially speaking. The social skills will be dampened and hurt even more than they are right now. I feel this generation is bad when it comes to social skills or even social etiquettes for that matter. So, with more increasing technology, then one of the biggest harms is that they don't know how to socialize. You take the gadgets away from these young children, put them in a room, and they don't know what to do at all because they're not used to not interacting without technology. And with the growing technology, you've seen what is in store. So, sitting in my room, I can enjoy a birthday party where all the members of the or the attendees of the party are sitting in their own houses, in their own rooms, and are dealing through a metaverse of their own. So, I mean, these gadgets are coming forward where you don't need to be physically there anymore. So, unfortunately, the whole experience is completely different. But what is also happening is that these AI tools are created by humans. So, whatever biases, limitations of humans are there, that will fall into those AI gadgets. So, relying on them is actually relying on that one or a few people whose opinions, whose knowledge is what you're banking on for the rest of your life, thinking this is the ultimate source of knowledge. But AI is also restricted, it's also limited due to the limitations of its makers who actually made them. And that's something we should never forget. Instead of thinking of this something as something as supernatural, it is not actually.
Yes. Before we wrap up the whole podcast, what's your verdict on today's discussion? What do you think? Can you give us some insights or final key takeaways?
I think technology is here to stay. It is here. It's not going anywhere. It's in our face. It's everywhere around us, in our homes, in our classrooms, in our markets, in our society, in our politics, in our economy. It's not going anywhere. So the idea is to deal with it, to learn with it, and to walk with it. Otherwise, it'll just leave you behind. But having said that, there has to be an awareness of the sort that this is not the ultimate sort of area to rely on, that there is more to the world than this as well. And technology too may be one day removed or substituted by something different. We know technology right now as something that we see and hear and feel. but there may come a time where we may think about it and it may happen. So technology will also evolve and change its shapes in the manner in which it is there right now. But this is definitely the future. In fact, the present, I would call it.
Yes, and thank you so much, Mr. Taimur, for joining us today. It was great to have you on Chai Time. Your insights were really, really important, and I think so. Everybody who had joined in, they can tell that your points, your opinions, they really matter to students. And as an educator, thank you so much for joining in.
Most welcome.
And yes, and before we wrap up today's conversation, I would like to tell everybody to check out our Opus website. Our pre-sale is live, and you guys can check that out. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining in. And